Okay, welcome to the Kitsap Sun Editorial Board. We're interviewing Sherry Appleton and Pete DeBoer, candidates for the 23rd District, Position 1 in the House. And we'll begin with introductions. I'm Jim Campbell, the opinion editor.
I'm Glenn Simonson, I'm the CFO.
I'm Luis Barantes, I'm the community board representative from North Kitsap.
I'm Carol Malmquist, and I'm the community board volunteer for Manchester.
Did you want me?
Sure.
I'm Representative Sherry Appleton.
And I'm Pete DeBoer, a candidate for the 23rd District, first position seat.
Okay, we'll begin with 3 minutes of opening comments from each of you, and I will do something like this and
Okay.
time out here. Yeah. Who would like to go first?
I begin with A, so
Yeah, there you go.
that's what they did to me this morning, so I might as well.
Go ahead.
As I said, I'm Representative Sherry Appleton, and I have represented the 23rd Legislative District for the last 6 years. And it's been an honor and a privilege to do it. It's a job that I love and I think I'm very good at. As everybody knows, we are going through a tremendously challenging time right now, economically and every other way. We're sort of lucky in Kitsap because our unemployment rate is 7.5%, is the 9.5 for the rest of the state, and that's because of the military influence. Now, one of the things that I've always said is that I always put Kitsap first, and that's true. This year I brought back, or I took the lead on saving Francis Haddon Morgan. And for people who don't know what Francis Haddon Morgan is, it's where the most profoundly autistic children live. And their families came to me and asked me if I would help save it. Did, and in the course of doing that, we saved over 100 jobs. The next thing I took a lead on was adult day health, saving that. 1.35 million saved 1,595 clients, and that allowed those families to continue to work instead of putting their loved ones into an institution or a nursing home or whatever. We have worked very hard as a delegation to bring jobs into Kitsap, and part of that is capital projects. So this year we brought back the restoration of Carpenter Creek, which I think is going to be very good for Kingston and water quality. We helped build the Keller House for Kitsap Mental Health, which is extremely important. We helped the Kids Discovery Museum in Bainbridge Island, which I love because I love kids to have that thirst for knowledge, and it's a great museum if you've never been there. Also worked very hard to get the Paulsbo Marine Science Center funded, which we did. And what I'm most proud of is Olympic College. We helped build the Science and Technology building. We also helped with the Sophia Bremer Early Learning Center and Childcare there, which is a wonderful thing, sort of melding people with children and going to school at the same time. We also have funded a study for the four-year college, which you all know, and we have 2 baccalaureate programs going now at Olympic College. One is the nursing program, and the other is the engineering program. My priorities, and by the way, all those projects brought 116 jobs into Kitsap, which doesn't seem like a lot. You're telling me time is up.
Can you do priorities?
What?
15, can you do priorities in 15
Sure.
seconds?
My priorities are jobs, healthcare, education, and transportation.
Okay, thank you, and thanks to Sun for doing this. My name is Pete DeBoer, and I'm a candidate for the 23rd District first position legislative seat. I'm a lifelong born and raised in Washington State native. I graduated from Bellevue High School, and I started service in the U.S. Coast Guard in 1964 and stayed in until late in 1985, a little over 21, close to 22 years, counting some time I did while I was still in high school. And I had a great career in the Coast Guard, and I came back to Kingston because Washington State was the place I belonged, and there was other places I could have gone when I retired. But I love Washington State. I've had ties to Kingston since the mid-50s when my parents bought a place there, and I've been in and out of Kitsap County ever since. I am currently elected Port Commissioner in the Port of Kingston, and been leading the charge to create the passenger ferry link between Seattle and Kingston. We've had some great capital improvement projects in the port. Our budget is balanced, and we continue to raise the net worth of the port. We've redone our stormwater drain management system, which had a net result in about 1 acre of new park area for the people to enjoy. I find in the port part of my life that the permitting to get projects done is just overbearing, and the layers of redundant regulations and regulatory management kind of stymie a lot of things. And the port as a public entity can move ahead and do things in a slow fashion, but if a business person were to try it, it would slow them down, and they couldn't get projects done cheaply enough and in time enough to create jobs that need to happen. I started my own small business in 1993, and I remanufactured laser printer cartridges. Olympic Printer Resources was a great business. I brought it from my basement with 1 toner cartridge to a company that now employs 15 people with a sales rep in Houston, Texas, and I'm very proud to have done that and to create those jobs that didn't exist before. I found one of the hardest customers to sell the products to was the state of Washington. They just didn't think that they needed to use recycled things because for some reason they didn't need to. That was very frustrating to try and do business with the state. And then when the Boeing company started digging holes in South Carolina, I made a decision to try and get involved in the state government and see what I could do. I've sold my company, I have some time, I think I have some experience that I can draw on over the last 45 years that will help me work with other representatives in the state, keep Kitsap County viable. And that's it, huh? We're done?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Anybody have any opening questions?
I do.
Opening question?
Well, I have a question, not
Sure, go ahead.
necessarily an opening one. If I may start with Sherry, and then you can answer it as you find applicable to you. Can the state afford small classrooms, as you advocate on your website, without relying on federal funds?
Well, we're not going to get the Race to the Top funds, which was disappointing. But yes, we can do smaller class size, but we have to still keep the taxes in place that we have. You can't cut taxes and fully fund education. The paramount duty of the state is to provide basic education. And we raised 4 taxes during the last session, or the 2010, on bottled water, on candy and gum, on beer, and on, I lost that one right there, candy and gum, beer, soda and gum. And those taxes are going to go to the classrooms. Just as 1098, the initiative, that would raise an income tax on the wealthier 3% of people in Washington State. And I support that initiative, so if you were going to ask that question, I'm telling you now, because 375,000 small businesses in the state of Washington, that's 80% of the businesses, will no longer pay a B&O tax. The last 12% that don't get that exemption from the B&O will get a $4,800 tax credit so that they can hire people and not be under the gun. And then the rest of the money will go into, 70% of it will go into the Education Legacy Trust Fund, which again reflects small class sizes, and the last 30% will go into health care. I think those are important things. I think that's what the state does. They have to help take care of those who can't take care of themselves, and I think they also have to provide for the paramount duty, which is education.
I also agree that education is a paramount duty of the state government. It's the first thing we have to take care of. I see our school systems a little overloaded with administrative costs, and a lot of our credentialed teachers are no longer in the classroom. I think one of the ways to reduce class size would be to bring more of the teachers who are already in the system back to the classroom. I don't think these little piecemeal taxes are the way to do it. I'm very proud of my Coast Guard career, and just living in the Coast Guard, you would take a ship the same size as the Navy, and the Navy would operate it with 250 people, and we would operate with 150 people, and we would get the same missions done and often be at sea longer and do more in varied missions. We capitalized on our training. We made sure that everybody was cross-trained, and you could do more than one mission, and the Coast Guard accomplishes a heck of a lot. The Coast Guard's annual budget is for everything, including pensions and pay and white paint and ships and aircraft and everything else that they do, and fuel is interestingly $100 million less than Washington State's budget for education, which is kind of an interesting thing to, I know it's apples and oranges, but the product that we're getting when you look at Katrina and Haiti and the oil spill, for the amount of money that we're spending, and I think we should be able to get, for the amount of money that's in education right now, I think we should be able to get a better deal from the people who are providing the service for us.
Just kind of following up on education a bit, Pete, in your response to our questionnaire here, you said that the state's education system is failing the future needs of the state.
I think so. It's
and I like Sherry's reaction to that.
Also,
So, I mean,
we're losing a lot of the minority students. They're not making it through to graduate from high school. Shooting from the hip, I think it's 47% of the African American males who enter our school system don't graduate from high school, and our dropout rate for everyone else is up there in the close to 20%. And I think we need to do something. We need to engage parents more often in our school system. We somehow need to almost make that a mandatory part of going to school. I think the private schools do a very good job with that, and you don't get to have your child in their institutions unless you participate in their education and help out with the school. But I think we can do a lot better job. We need to get kids graduated, more students graduated, and we need to get them into wonderful things like Olympic College, where they're doing workforce development. We don't need to have everyone on the way to college, because that doesn't work. There's all kinds of places around the world where you identify students in their early teens, and they go off on a track of blue-collar work, and they build things like Mercedes-Benzes and airplanes, and they do quite well in life, and they're not frustrated by somebody trying to jam physics and quantum mathematics down their throat, and they don't have the aptitude for that, but they can sure do some good welding and pipe fitting and things like that, which are all necessary for our infrastructure.
Sherry, do you agree with the
I
failing
think
the future needs of our?
I'm not sure that I agree completely. We do have to do a better job. There's no question about it. Native American students, Hispanic students, African American students do fall behind. But a lot of that is because they're in poor school districts. And hopefully levy equalization between districts helps in that regard. I listen to all the gloom and the doom, and we're not educating people, we're not doing this. And as I said at the NAACP forum, I think we have the finest education system in the world. And the reason we do is because we educate every student. That doesn't mean we do the best job, but we do a pretty good job. If you're in England, if you're in Japan, if you're in India, only the best and the brightest go forward. In our country, every child has the opportunity to be educated, and I think that's a really important thing. Yes, it can lead to problems, but in the nth degree, I think it's pretty great that we have a public school system where every child can come and get educated. If it were up to me, I would make community and technical colleges part of K through 14. That's what I think, because kids need to have that step up in our society today. It's just important. I don't care whether you're going to fix a car, you need to know what a computer does. And if you need to know what a computer does, you need to know how to read and understand. And all those things are very important. But I will never say that we have a failing education system. We need to do better. I understand that completely. But we still educate every single child, and that's important.
May I?
Going to quickly, before I ask my questions, I just want to point out that I've known both of you for many, many years. I have a tremendous amount of respect and admiration for both of you and what you're doing. Pete, your mention of the Coast Guard caught my ear because you're the second candidate that we've interviewed here that brings up their experience in the Coast Guard and the military as a benefit and a skill to be used when you do reach Olympia. My question to you is, how do you translate how the Coast Guard operates from a top-down command structure where you're given an order, you follow the order, to a situation in Olympia where, and Sherry, you're going to have to answer how you do it there, where you have to go and you wheel and deal, you're talking to people, you can't just go up there and say, I want a new school for Kitsap.
No.
You have to work your way through that. So to you, I ask you, how do you translate that experience and that success in the Coast Guard to working in Olympia? And Sherry, how is it that you operate there that you think makes you unique and makes you better?
Okay.
Pete, go ahead.
Pete first.
Okay.
And by the way, Pete, Danny Piper's my neighbor, so I got
I
a little on you. So.
I know. Danny's known me since '65, and vice versa. Interestingly, my last job in the Coast Guard, I got through doing all the adventuresome stuff at sea and everything, and they said it's time to go back and work as a staff jockey, and I got to be the congressional liaison for the Surgeon General of the Coast Guard, and did spend a lot of time working on Capitol Hill and recognizing that life in the legislative part of government is much different than the military part of the government, and it's a good thing it is that way. I don't think we would want it another way, and there's been attempts in the past to kind of give too much power to our military to control things domestically, and we just never ever want that to happen in this country. I've been working on the Port Commission. Well, let's take it back to the Coast Guard. That was what Lewis's question was. The Coast Guard is kind of unique in military services too, because you're put in places where there are no big military bases generally, and you're set up to negotiate and deal with local governments. In Charleston, South Carolina, we were constantly working with the City Hall in the state of South Carolina with several bases that we operated there. I've been exposed to things outside of the Coast Guard for probably the last 10 years of my Coast Guard career, and then since I have retired and I've gone into business of my own, and then my activity on the Port of Kingston Commission for 6.5 years, I think I can bring, life is a collection of experiences, and I think I have a lot of them, and that I think I can bring a lot of good experience to this position.
Wow. Okay. It's very different at the legislature, as you know, because we have 3 separate branches: executive, legislative, and judicial. And I am involved, obviously, with the legislative. And there is really an interesting dichotomy that is going on there, because you do have 2 sides of the aisle. But let me tell you, you can't pass anything without the other side of the aisle, even though we had an extreme majority. When you think 61-37, that is, a lot of votes that we could have done and just rolled over the Republicans. But we didn't. We involved them in everything. I mean, in committees, they have as many people as we do, except that because we're in the majority, we get 1 or 2 more. But they have the ability to stop legislation just like anything else. So we have to build a consensus. We have to be responsible. We have to look at everything and balance it, what are the unintended consequences, as well as what the consequences are. Because there are a lot of unintended consequences when you pass legislation. It's consensus building right along, and I'm sure it's consensus building here at the Sun when you write an editorial. I mean, it's just how it is. As far as the military goes, I can't answer to that. The only thing I can answer is that my husband was in the Navy 32 years and was the most senior Master Chief in the United States Navy. And when we got married, he said, always say very well. And I said, wrong person. But no, I love the military services. Obviously, my husband was married to the Navy and he loved it. And when he retired, it really, was different for him. But at the legislature, it's not a military establishment. What it is consensus building. And that means that the weakest person can be part of the best solution. And I think that's very important.
You mentioned before, Sherry. Oh, I'm sorry, Glenn.
Well, it's okay.
Go.
I just got a simple question.
Go. Here's a simple one.
Poor Carol can't get that
No,
question.
no problem.
Oh, I've
no
got a
problem.
couple of pages worth.
Okay.
Okay, simple question. Should the state be in the liquor business?
I have to tell you, years and years and years ago, when I ran against Ellen Craswell, that was one of my platforms to privatize the liquor business, because I came from a state that didn't privatize liquor. But OFM has done some really deep studies on this, the Office of Financial Management, for those who don't know. And they are estimating that we will lose between $300 and $500 million over the next 5 years. We will go, and part of that is because one of the initiatives, and I hope I don't misspeak, I think it's 1100, repeals all of the taxes. And then asks the legislature or the Liquor Control Board to suggest one tax. And so the state will lose that money. And right now, in our economic upheaval that we're having, that's a lot of money to lose over the next 5 years. They also say that we will go from 351 liquor stores, both contracted out and state liquor stores, to 3,357 outlets for liquor. And one of the things the state is pretty proud of is that we have a 98% compliance rate of minors being served alcohol or being able to buy alcohol. Our people are extremely well trained. Now you're looking at convenience stores, gasoline stations, grocery stores, whatever, and will they have the same compliance rate that we have? I don't believe, as other people do, that people will increase their drinking. I don't believe that. If you drink, you drink, and if you don't, you don't. But I do believe that. So now I am ambivalent. I used to think that it was a good thing. When I see that our coffers would be 300 to 500 million less over a 5-year period, I feel differently about it.
I think coming from the business standpoint, the competition is a real good thing, and it drives the economy of the nation. And if we had, there has to be some sort of taxing mechanism for the sale of spirits, just as there is for the sale of cars and everything else that we buy. And there will be licensing fees that would probably preclude some small businesses from getting into the business of selling liquor. But if we went to 3,300 new outlets, I can see at least 3 jobs in each one of those that are good paying, competitive jobs, and I can see our Teamsters on the highways moving things all over the state that isn't happening right now. That there is cargo that could be moved from outside of one central location in South Seattle. There could be places in Spokane and Ellensburg and Pasco or whatever that were distribution centers, and they would employ a lot more people. And and then the stores would compete with one another, and the ones that were successful, the ones that stayed out of trouble, the ones that didn't get fined by the state because they weren't in compliance, would prevail. And I believe that it would create a new economy that doesn't exist in the state right now, and a lot more private sector jobs.
Just to clarify, are you saying at least 3 jobs at each of the outlets, or?
Yeah, I would think so. If you had let's take a QFC store. just for stocking the shelves and managing the inventory, there would be more people working there that, in that store, just when you add a big product like that. I have friends who have grocery stores in California, and they screen the employees a little bit differently, and those are the ones that get to work with the spirits. Not every bag boy is back there stocking the shelves, and so it still becomes a well-guarded piece of your enterprise. But I would say that there would be more jobs, and then you talk about the distribution. I think we have a lot more jobs than what we have right now.
Just briefly, Sherry, do you agree with that? Or?
I can't honestly say. It seems to me that OFM, studied this situation, and they didn't say there would be more jobs. Obviously, if you have 3,157 more outlets, but it seems to me that the people who work in those stores now would be the ones that would be stocking the shelves. I don't have any information that says it would be a boom. I have the information that it's just the opposite.
I have a secondary question. For the state's concern, and I don't mean to, this is going to sound more of a criticism than anything, but the state having a concern that the right people are selling alcohol and they can best do it. I was really surprised, either last year or the year before, in this very down economy where people are without jobs and work is a premium, and yet there was talk of opening up a state liquor store near Kitsap Mall or in the mall for Christmas. And I thought, here's the state actually hoping that people are going to buy more liquor, which seemed rather contrary to hearing that.
Well, I know that they would like to make a profit on all the liquor that they do sell. I can't tell you about the Kitsap Mall,
I just
whether
remember
they were
reading
going
that
to
and thinking that
build that there.
Same.
Our liquor stores, I have to say, when you have a 98% compliance rate, I don't think that if one went into the mall that would change. I think it would be more strict even in the mall, because people, now that the Kitsap sheriff is going to move into the mall, there's a lot more oversight. But I don't particularly want a liquor store in the mall, but you know that you...
during the holidays.
But during the holidays, so it was probably just a kiosk type. But if you have a wine shop in the mall, that's different, because you can sell wine and beer in different outlets. And so I don't see the great difference between the two.
Do you have a comment or not?
Yeah, I think the retail sales of things control the retail industry, and if things don't make a profit, they're not going to go there. One advantage that the state distribution of liquor has is although we fix a tax rate on liquor, I think last year they used the rack rate price increase so that the amount that the tax was applied to was big. They raised the price of everything we were selling without raising the rate of tax. So if it was taxed at 6%, it was being 6% of $10 where it used to be 6% of $8, and generated more income that way for the state through the sales of liquor. I think that's an unfair competition, really, that the state has the total monopoly on it. And I think that you look at other states that are doing just fine by their own sales of liquor. I think one of the things, we still need to have enforcement, we still need to have compliance, but I believe that the business people in Washington State could handle that. So.
I have an income tax question. You mentioned that you were in favor of an income tax for the top 2% earners. 3% earners.
Yeah.
And what I'm going to ask you is, am I wrong in this? And if so, what is the right answer? On the radio on the way over here today, I heard that included in this top small percent is a lot of small business owners. And if we put an income tax on them, would that then be more burdensome and hurtful to small business?
I know the idea is that we're going after the rich people, but if small business is included in that 3%, then that becomes punitive. So I don't care who starts.
Well, actually, it's not targeted at small business. As a matter of fact, small business will get a tremendous break from the B&O tax, which they should have for a long time. 375,000 small businesses will no longer have to pay B&O tax, as I said before. And the 12% that are left get a 10 times increased tax credit to $4,800. I believe that when you look at this initiative, besides targeting that top 3%, that's $250,000 for a single individual and $1 million for $500,000 for a couple, and then it goes up to $1 million. And most small businesses don't make $1 million, so they wouldn't be small businesses. But we also, in this initiative, which came through Bill Gates Sr., who did the Gates Commission report in 2001, which had 9 portfolios looking at all the different taxes. Also, every property owner in the state of Washington will get a 20% cut in their property taxes. In the initiative is also a very, very strong wording about the public is the only one who's going to get to raise taxes. If, you know, one of the things that we hear from people, oh, well, 2 years you'll just raise taxes, but it's very, very strong in this initiative, and there's also public audits, which are important, tough requirements on public audits.
So you're putting safeguards in the bill against yourselves.
Right, exactly. Well,
To keep
first of all,
yourselves from.
it's not our
It's
bill.
an initiative.
It's
not
an
a bill.
initiative,
Yeah.
and
But
it's not ours.
Safeguard the public from the politicians.
Absolutely. And that's what Bill Gates Sr. wanted to do. And so, you know, that money is going into education. That money will go into education and healthcare, which I think is very important. And the businesses in the state of Washington will get a tax break, will not have to pay B&O tax, the majority of them. And the property owners will get a 20% cut in their property taxes. You can't ask for more than that. This is, I think, a really responsible and balanced way of doing this. And it'll be up to the people. If the people don't want this, they'll vote against it. And if they want it, they'll vote for it. And then we'll go from there.
Just to clarify, you said every property owner in the state will get a 20% cut of the property taxes. Do you mean in the state's portion of the property taxes?
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I should have said state portion of the property
Yeah,
tax,
which is-
because you know, the local portion
Right.
are school levies, EMS, and all that. I'm sorry.
You stole my thunder, Jim. One of the interesting things I was able to do in the business that I started in Olympic Printer Resources was to meet hundreds, if not thousands, of small business owners around the Pacific Northwest. And they struggle. If one of them does make $200,000 or $250,000, they have earned every penny of that. And in order for them to put that in their bank account, they've earned every cent of it, I think, because they don't do it on their own. They do it off the hard work of their employees. They do it off of keeping their employees happy. You're already saddled with, you know, around here, how many employees you have and what it costs to keep 25, 30, 80 people employed. What the cost of employment is horrendous in this state. I would say that if you have a business owner out there that's came up with a good idea and he's employing a couple of hundred people because of it, and that's just in his own business, and there's value-added businesses that occur when a part is manufactured and it's shipped to an end user, or where it's going to be assembled into an airplane or an automobile or a video camera. It's unbelievable how much commerce that creates, and I think that creating the new jobs will have a much better effect on the tax revenues in the state of Washington than taxing the top 2 or 3% of our wage earners. They've earned it, and the way they've earned it is by employing other people. And if we can get our unemployment rate back to a sensible spot, and fortunately in Kitsap County we are in better shape than the rest of the country, but the whole country needs to look at manufacturing and producing things and jobs. But the business owners are spending a lot of money employing people. I know I've done it myself. Louis has done it. You do it here. Sherry's had her own business. When you have employees, you have vast responsibilities. And what those employees do when they take their paycheck home is they buy cars, they buy RVs, they buy jet skis, they buy water skis, they buy gasoline, they buy jeans and all kinds of other things, and they go on vacations. And that's where we get the benefit of having jobs. We need to create the jobs in this. We need to create this, the state needs to have the environment so that new jobs can be created. And that will solve the problems. I don't think we need an income tax. I think we do need to address the B&O tax. I hated paying a tax on a net income or a gross income because it just doesn't make any sense. We raised one of the other taxes that was raised in the last session was an adjustment to the B&O tax for the service industry.
I'm going to touch on that.
Okay.
Real quick.
And can I say one thing though? When we're talking about small business, for the people out there in the audience, we're talking about 25 employees and under. We're not talking about industries that have 200 employees or 100 employees or even 75 employees. We're talking about small business, not big business.
Is
I'm
small
sorry.
defined by the number of employees or small defined by gross?
I think it's defined by employees.
Okay, I think the taxing system is defined by gross. So anyhow, we'll go back to something about that, besides that. I mean, you've touched on a couple of things that I wanted to really touch on specifically. First and foremost, I did make it a point to tell both of you that I was unemployed.
Yes,
You know,
you did.
and I've gone past the stage where it's disappointing, embarrassing, to the point where it's frustrating.
Mhm.
You know, and quite frankly, I'm at my wit's end. I'm 50 years old and I've never been in this situation.
Mhm.
Okay, and you kind of walked yourself into this one when you mentioned about unintended consequences, and we're talking to B&O and jobs. And the last newsletter, you talked about the increase in B&O to services and industries, lawyers and accountants. But you know, one of the things you don't realize is that the B&O tax is incredibly complicated. It's not a simple thing. There's all kinds of different categories.
There are.
And it's often a struggle to even find which category you go into. But I want to point out something here real quickly. The lady who cleans your house, the Mary maids who clean your house, they pay 4 times as much in B&O taxes as an escort service. You tell me why that makes sense. You don't have to tell me right now. I'm just pointing out that you're making decisions without knowing everything.
Well,
Now, I want to finish this up by one simple question to both of you, and it relates to job. We hear every candidate coming in here telling us how it's important to create jobs. I want to know from Pete specifically what you think you can do when you get to Olympia that will create jobs, and what do you think you've done that have created jobs specifically on a general basis? Anybody can go first.
You want to go first?
Sure, that's fine. In those capital projects that I told, and one thing I wanted to tell you about the raise in the B&O tax, it's temporary. It will be gone. It is
Still a raise.
Yeah, it is. But there are so many people hurting.
I know that, sure.
Yes,
Trust me.
so unfortunately, people have to share the pain. It can't be just one segment of the population that bears the pain and nobody else. But in those capital projects that I was telling you about, I think I said that 116 jobs were created bringing those capital projects into Kitsap County. Before that, when the economy was sort of robust, if you can think back 4 years, we brought $57 million worth of new projects into Kitsap County. Those were sewer districts, those were parks, they were the infrastructure. And that created jobs. Right now, the legislature estimates that they created in the last 4 years 40,000 jobs. There is a referendum on the ballot right now, referendum 52, that would create 38,000 jobs in making schools healthy, you know, because they have bad air, black mold, all that stuff. Now, I realize those are construction jobs. I realize that a lot of those jobs are temporary and they go away. But once you start that ball rolling, where people have jobs, even if it's in just infrastructure and construction, they're still going out to the corner grocery store and buying groceries, and they're buying milk, and they're buying school clothes for their kids. And as that starts to mushroom, then it goes into other service businesses so that the economy feels good after a while. And right now, we just live under this blanket of fear that we are so oppressed by this economic upheaval that we're never going to get out. You know, there was a bad housing report today. We have to start thinking a little bit optimistically, that if we spend a little bit of money, if you have money, and spend a little money, that maybe that will mushroom into another job, another business. That's how I feel about it. I'm an eternal optimist, and I just can't live under doom and gloom. I refuse to do that.
Okay. Well, a lot of the jobs Sherry's talking about require some tax revenues to get rolling, and if we don't have a well-employed workforce that starts the spending, she's talking about stimulus, which has come down a little bit, but we don't see nationwide too much results from lots of money in stimulus. We had a project in the Port of Kingston to build a 20 by 40 foot kayak facility to allow people to use the water with non-motorized floating craft and an inexpensive way to enjoy recreation. It took us over 2 years to permit a floating building that took 42 days to build. We had 5 or 6 different layers of regulatory scrutiny on the project, and of the five layers, 3 of them were totally redundant, but each one charged a significant fee. Each one was looking at the same thing: if it's stormwater runoff, if it's the kind of paint you use, if it's shading, if it's non-shading. They all had a say in it, and we need to. And if I were an investor that wanted to build a kayak facility someplace on Puget Sound that would employ 2 or 3 people, and perhaps create an outlet to sell kayaks to people, I would have packed up my bags and gone to the Coeur d'Alene or something, because it's just too difficult to start a business in Washington State, especially the shore side. And we have more shoreline in this state than virtually, except until you get to Alaska, I think. And we need to take a real close look and a quick look and reduce the size of the regulatory enforcement that affects the creation of jobs. And that would be a great place to start. And people will lose jobs there, but we'll create such an environment for new work that the educated and trained people who are doing things in fisheries will find things to do in that same kind of an industry outside of the government. And then they're creating the revenue stream it takes to provide the good government, the schools and everything. It takes 8 to 10 good-paying, totally private sector people working in America to afford one public sector employee. It takes about 10% of our after-federal tax income in this state to keep the state, the counties, and the cities operating. So,
can I say one
sure.
thing, if it's all right, because I know you've got a time crunch. Legislators pass laws. We are the legislative branch of government. Agencies write regulations, and that's the executive part of government. We can't micromanage that. What we can do when we hear of a regulation that's oppressive, we can question the agency and ask them to explain it. But we can't.
Yeah. I'll let you take that with you.
Okay, I'll take it with me. But and I understand that. I do understand that there are regulations, but a lot of those regulations are local, put out by the counties, put out by the cities, depending on where you live.
I guess that was the gist of my question to both of you. In the capacity that you want to serve, how are you going to make a difference? And that was the basis of my question.
Well, I have
I know we do have
worked
some-
very hard at making things fair. And when people call me with problems, I never ask them what party they are or anything like that. We set out to fix the problem. One woman, because she had a capital gains tax after she got divorced, her health care premium went up 3 times through the basic health plan. We were able, it took us 1 year, but we were able to get a hearing and return her back to normal. We work on these problems every single day. But the one thing that the legislature doesn't do is they pass laws, and then it's up to the agencies, the executive branch, to format the regulations. If the regulations aren't good and we are told, then we can repeal the law. But we can't go in there and tell agencies what they can and cannot do. That's the executive branch.
So surely you've heard that the B&O tax is.
Oh my gosh, yes. And
Okay.
I paid
So that
B&O
gives you an
tax.
opportunity to work on it.
Carol, that's
Yeah.
one of the things that we're doing.
Yeah, good.
And if 375,000 businesses, should this initiative pass, aren't paying B&O tax any longer, that is pretty good. I paid B&O tax for 11 years. I understand what B&O tax is. And I have always said, and I think Jim can corroborate this, that one of the things that I have always disliked was B&O tax, and I didn't think that it should be. We're the only state who has it, by the way.
I'll have to
And-
tell you that every politician that's come in here has said the same thing.
Yeah.
But
We all hate B&O tax.
But I have always said that I would get rid of it. But the problem is, and then you have a hole in the budget.
Where's the
What do
bill
you
to get
fill?
rid of it then?
Yeah.
You can't get rid, that's awfully simplistic.
Oh.
You can't get rid of the B&O without something to be put back
Take it
in
back.
its place. So, that's
But
it.
I think there needs to be initiatives to do that, if we're gonna have a business tax, it needs to be on your net and not your gross.
Well,
That's place to
1098 will effectively do that.
And that's had to come from the citizens.
Well, yeah, I mean, usually those things do come from the citizens, because you can't have an income tax in the state without a public vote.
Right.
Yeah, I think
At
we're,
3:45,
yeah,
We
we
should
should
get a
get,
little bit of extra time.
Okay, I have one more, and I'll do it real
Oh.
fast, if I may.
If we need more time, we'll take it.
Okay, and I hate to say, please be brief, since they are running out of time, someone else may have a question. 8 times in the last 5 years alone, the DOT highway projects have had to be torn up at nearly $5 million. Where's the oversight, in your opinion? What would you do? And if you don't mind, let Sherry start.
I think it's deplorable. I mean, that is absolutely irresponsible, and someone should have been in charge. Now, Paula Hammond, who's the Secretary of DOT, just came on 2 years ago. And before that, it wasn't under the governor. And a lot of these projects were already in the pipeline before the governor took over as the head of the Department of Transportation. I think Paula knows very well that this was a terrible thing. I mean, they don't need any more bad PR. And I read that in the paper today too. And it's just horrifying that they could make that big a mistake. But then again, you look at Wagga Way intersection, and that should tell you something. I've been against that intersection since the very beginning, because I think it's terribly unsafe. And,
So where is the oversight?
well, the oversight comes from the Secretary of Transportation. She is the authority over all of that.
So is she falling down on the job, or?
I wouldn't say that. That's not my job to say that. But I would think that the governor would be really embarrassed that this has happened. And as far as Paula goes, she was not in that position at the time that these projects started. So I can't tell you. It would be probably the Transportation Commission.
With the exception of the Tacoma one, because she is in office now.
Right,
and that just
right.
occurred.
Right, but I think that was designed before her time.
when you take over command of a ship, you get what you get, and the crew's already on board, and you need to deal with it. You know, to say we don't want another PR disaster, I don't want to be pumping all of this gas tax into the tank of my car and have it squandered. We need to have oversight. We need to, Washington State produces some of the best engineers in the world. And if the ones that are in place right now, and I don't care if it's in highways or ferries, aren't doing the job, we need to get ones that can, because we have great engineers in this country. We have aerospace engineers that there's no other country can match what we have. There are good thinking people in this country, and we have to be able to replace the ones that aren't doing the job. That should be the bottom line. I see the Navy replacing commanding officers on ships that aren't doing what they're supposed to be doing these days. I read it in the Navy Times every week. That's the ultimate challenge. And if you're not getting the job done, and they're spending billions of our money on nickel projects and 9.5-cent projects, which have really added up and are bonded out till our children are our grandparents, and we need to get a handle on it. And any project that starts digging a hole needs to be planned out to the nth degree. The only thing that I would think would interrupt them or stall them, if we have such smart people, would be something like an earthquake or a flood that can't be controlled.
Okay, we need to wrap this up.
Okay.
I'll give each of you a minute to tell voters why they should vote for you and not that other person.
Well, should I go first?
Sure.
Again, I'm Representative Sherry Appleton, and why you should vote for me, at least I hope you will, is that I am uniquely qualified to be the representative. I had 8 years in city government. I was elected a freeholder in 2000 to look at the county charter. I was a lobbyist for 11 years working on many different portfolios, so that I really got a deep understanding for a lot of different issues. And I've been a representative for the last 6 years, and I have worked my buns off to bring jobs to Kitsap, even though you don't believe that. And I have worked very hard to help people solve problems and to make life better. And so I continue putting Kitsap first, and I ask for your vote, and I hope you will vote on November 2nd.
I'm Pete DeBoer, and I'm a candidate for the 23rd District. I bring a lifetime of service. Since 1964, I've been serving the public and private businesses and trying to help them get along. My Coast Guard career in various phases of management and healthcare brings some knowledge that's not there yet. I think we need some fresh voices in Olympia. I've owned and operated my own business. I know what it's like to take a few paydays off so that my employees can get paid, and I know what it's like to reward them when they're successful and we've accomplished some good things. As in a Port of Kingston Commission, we finish jobs on time, our budget is balanced, and we approach things from a business standpoint as though we were a real business, and we are the best stewards of the money of the Port Commission or the Port District constituents, and we're very open there, and that's the way I intend to be in Olympia. My name is Pete DeBoer, and I ask for your vote. Thank you.
Can you approve this message?
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you both.